Welcome back. Now, if you've been following the activities of terrorists in West Africa, especially that of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, AQIM for short, you should be very much concerned as a Nigerian. We'll tell you why shortly. In November last year, Islamist terrorists claiming to be Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, in conjunction with two other terrorist organizations, attacked the Radisson Blu Hotel in Bamako, the capital of Mali, killing 20 persons. On January 15 this year, there was another attack in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. A hotel and a coffee shop were the targets. The terrorists killed at least 30 persons before security forces eventually killed them. 4 terrorists took part in that attack, and as in the attack in Mali, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb claimed responsibility. And by the way, it was the very first time terrorists would be targeting that West African state. And just as recent as March 13th, Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb carried out yet another attack. This time, it was in Ivory Coast. At least 4 gunmen, I should say, armed gunmen now, targeted a beachside resort hotel in the coastal town of Grand Bassam. They killed 16 persons, including 4 Europeans and 2 soldiers. In all of these attacks, the terrorists targeted high-profile hotels that are popular with Westerners. The Ivory Coast attack, too, was the first such attack in that country. Before now, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb had been known to be active in North Africa, which has always been their base. But they now appear to be shifting base and spreading their tentacles in West Africa. So the question is, could Nigeria be a potential target? The country is already battling Boko Haram in the northeast. It's also an economic powerhouse in the region with several high-profile hotels. So there's no question at all that if the opportunity presented itself, Al-Qaeda might want to launch similar attacks here. Well, earlier I spoke to Nigeria's foremost security expert, Dr. Onai Komo. I began by asking him whether he thinks Nigeria is at risk, especially high-profile hotels.
AQIM, Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, and Amirabitum, that's AMB, they have been advancing their operations in West Africa in a very aggressive fashion. For many years, they have been here running operations in the Sahelian zone, and they had been running between Mali, Niger, Chad, but they hadn't come in this direction. They hadn't come to the countries, the 2 countries you've mentioned recently in your introduction. That's Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso, and any other country for that matter, Senegal or Ghana, any of those normal West African countries. We know of their antecedents in Mali, and of course several attacks in Agadez, on that uranium plant also in Niger Republic. So, but now it appears, of course, they have done it. It's apparent that they have moved their footprint down and more toward the ocean, and they are making a stepwise migration, a stepwise movement, which has seen a movement to Burkina Faso, then further down south to Ivory Coast, and of course it's going to move eastward now to Nigeria. So I think we intelligence officials here, security officials, should be very concerned about Nigeria being selected, on their target list, because we have a lot of rich targets for them to pick on. What have they picked on historically? Hotels with foreigners in attendance, and what method have they used? Active shooter scenario, where a few men, in the case of Radisson Blu in Mali, 2 men, in the case of Splendid Hotel, 3 men, in the case of Grand Bassam Resort, 6 men, where a few men will go out and cause a lot of carnage. Well, what was the fatality in those 3 attacks? 70 dead and over 400 injured. So, they are really moving very aggressively, and they have been using their hardcore fighters to run these operations. They've not used local recruits. In those 3 instances, they used hardcore AQIM and AMB fighters to do the operation. So we really should be very concerned.
Why the choice of hotels? I mean, their targets have been hotels, and these are not just ordinary hotels, high-profile hotels. And of course, as you said, we've got them in abundance in Nigeria. I mean, you have a lot of them here in Lagos, and you have them in Abuja. So basically, Nigeria is a potential target.
Yes, sir. You see, hotels, just like airports, present a very tempting target, particularly hotels that are frequented by foreigners, because you have all kinds of nationalities in that kind of a place. Now, in a hotel attack, usually a hotel will have some kind of minimum deadly force capability on hand, meaning maybe 2 or 3 armed police personnel or soldiers. So once you overcome or once you take out those security personnel, then you have a free run of the place, and you can kill as many. Now, just like you saw in the Belgium, the Brussels attack yesterday, their goal is really to just kill as many people. I mean, of course, that's by another group, but that's a competitor group. That is ISIS. They are in direct competition with Al-Quaeda. That is a competitor group, but they have the same goal, global jihad, and killing as many people as possible. So the hotels present a very tempting target to them because they can kill many nationalities, they can get great notoriety, and it is easy to overwhelm the kind of security forces that will be present in a hotel environment.
Other than what the security agencies should be doing at this time, what exactly should you expect, would you expect hotels now to be doing? I'm talking about the management of hotels now. What kind of security architecture would you want them to be putting in place at this very moment?
Well, most certainly, sir. They should, first of all, be looking at vulnerability, just even based on this conversation I'm having with you. They should not just see where their vulnerabilities are right now. Minimum deadly force capability, and then perhaps being able to spot malevolent individuals when they come on the approach. So you must have a lot of metal detection devices, even bomb sniffing devices, K9 in some of these environments. Because yes, we want to be very welcoming. That's what makes hotels very appealing to them. Hotel environments are designed to be welcoming, to be open, to be friendly to all comers. But of course, in this case, we see that some of the comers are also terrorists, and they come with the intent to kill. So I think you can ratchet up at that hotel facility, at the perimeter of those hotel facilities. You can ratchet up security and then maintain a strong posture such that once people clear security, then you know that they are, they've been vetted. That means they are not going to cause devastation or havoc, and then you can now let them in. And that way you can also pick up on your radar, you can pick up terrorists who are planning to mount an attack. So in the 3 attacks that we have looked at, they didn't really do much about concealing themselves. They just went to the hotels and opened fire. So that tells you the kind of security posture in those hotels. They were very weak. And then in those, at least 2 of the 2 hotels, Splendid and the Radisson Blu, they actually took hostages also. So, so they were in situ, but they were good active shooters because they gave their lives very quickly also.
We know Boko Haram has pledged allegiance now to ISIS and not to Al-Qaeda. And we can see Al-Qaeda, you know, definitely showing its strength in Africa, especially in West Africa, with these attacks we have seen in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Cote d'Ivoire. Do you think that at some point that if this is not checked, we could come to a point where Al-Qaeda or Boko Haram might decide to also team up with Al-Qaeda? Well,
Al-Qaeda certainly seems to be grabbing very powerful headlines in Africa now, particularly West Africa. In fact, of course, North Africa, they just had a spectacular attack, recently in Tunisia. And so I think the Al-Qaeda is having a good run right now in West Africa. And now that Boko Haram is losing out, his stocks are falling, and is losing out in the battlefield, and is withdrawing into the countryside to launch sporadic attacks, it might decide, since there's a very wide footprint of Al-Qaeda, it might decide to now throw its lot in with Al-Qaeda, because they appear to be closer and they can provide the kind of support it needs. After all, Boko Haram received initial training in that immediate, at its beginning stage of conflict, that's 2009, early 2010, from Akim. So it got a lot of training support. In fact, its bomb-making skills came out of Akim. It was Akim scientists who taught BH how to make bombs, which they later perfected. So the point here being that if, and you know how Boko Haram, you know, on March 1st last year, when Shekau pledged allegiance to ISIS, that was because at that time ISIS's stock was rising very heavily, because if you remember from the previous year, July 2014 to about that March 2015, ISIS was 8, and so you know, ISIS grabbed all the headlines at that time. And so if Al-Qaeda is making steady progress in this operational area now, it appears to me that Boko Haram might soon be tempted to throw its lot in with Al-Qaeda.
All right. Let me quickly ask you also, what, I mean, in the light of these attacks by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic Maghreb, what you would expect our own security agencies here to be doing at this moment, especially when it comes to these attacks now on hotels and all of that. What exactly would you be expecting, or would you expect our security agencies to be doing to you know, stop any potential attack in this country?
Well, very importantly, we need to go very aggressive on intelligence gathering. That is one level. And the one that's not much spoken about often is analysis. Because when you get this intelligence, what do you do with it? It is the analysis that helps you to learn the intents of the bad guys. So we need to really up our game. And of course, we know that the analysis is the more difficult part, because that is a cerebral activity. And so we need to really up our game in terms of gathering intelligence, analyzing that intelligence. Now, what about providing ability for citizens to call in tips? So we need to have, right now, tips hotlines whereby people can call in very uncomplicated numbers, tips with voice logging recorder, such that when tips come in, when they are grabbed, they are properly processed for accountability also. And now we need to have a situation where we ratchet up security. First, we need to profile vulnerable points, key points, and then we need to have security properly designed for those places to protect or to defend against those attacks, because when those attacks do start happening, they happen very fast and they claim a lot of lives in very short order. And so what about security officials and corporate security? Because the hotels are under the management of corporate security executives. So not just hotels, you have other public buildings, you know, major corporate headquarters buildings around this country. They are all fair game because they provide the kind of demographics, the kind of population that these people are going after. And so they need to also up their game in terms of looking out for persons. I think the current threat that Akim is exhibiting is active shooter. So I think we can be looking out more for the active shooter threat. Because what happens with these bad guys, they are like all human beings. They are creatures of habit. They do the same thing over and over again. So if they've not been bombing their other targets, we don't expect that they will come in bombing targets. Well, in the case of Splendid Hotel, they actually had hand grenades of course, which is a bomb, which they were tossing along with the shooting. So I think we need to be aware of the kinds of threats that they pose to us, active shooter threat, hand grenade or maybe IED threats, and certainly the threat of foreigners invading these kinds of places, you know, and giving their lives as a consequence. So I think if we do some of these things, run these intelligence operations, because we must, the only way to defend against this, I mean, it's really indefensible, these kinds of attacks, but the only way to defend against it is to learn the intent, intent indeed, yes, learn the intent of the bad guys ahead of time, such that when they come, well, first, so that they can be thwarted or their attacks can be nullified, and then if they come, they can meet a hardened place. But I think you can also do target hardening in place of these various sites that may be vulnerable to such attacks, and that will help the situation.
Quickly ask you one final question, very quickly now. What would be your assessment of our fight against Boko Haram so far? It appears, you know, no question at all, the military is prosecuting the war. Should I say very well?
Yes, I think you can say very well. Now, the only problem I have, I hate to not sound, first of all, I'm very happy, I'm very grateful to God that the military is kicking Boko Haram's butt, which is good. But, you know, I have seen Boko Haram run this play many times before. They can beat a tactical retreat. They know right now. I mean, we always knew that Boko Haram was no match for the Nigerian military. But Boko Haram sprung a lot of surprises, you know, along the way. But be that as it may, now the military seems to be focused, and the military has taken the high road, has taken the fight for Boko Haram, and Boko Haram has turned tail and is running. But I have a problem here. I don't want us to become complacent or start beating our chests. It's like what just happened in Belgium. There was a celebratory mood there. People were slapping their back that they got Saleh Abdesalam. And then here goes this big attack in Brussels. So we don't know whether it was the capture of Saleh, but, you know, from the kind of weapons they put out there, the kind of things they did in Brussels yesterday, 22nd of March, you see that it was a well-planned attack and it had been in the offing for a while. So we always know that terrorism is the weapon of the weak against the strong. The strong, in this case, being the Nigerian military, the weak being Boko Haram. So I think we should be very careful, because now let me tell you the test for this. Most people who have speak to in the Northeast, they say, stay on the highway. Don't go even 100 or 200 meters into the bush. You'll be killed by Boko Haram. So if that is the case, they mean that Boko Haram still controls the countryside, and that's a problem with me, because there should be no ungoverned space in Nigeria. That is what that says. It means that there's a lot of ungoverned spaces, but the military controls the highways. And that is what somebody like Akim can exploit to come into this country also. And we don't want that. So we really want, and in addition to what I was saying about getting Akim, we need to tighten our borders with immigration officials and police officials. And in fact, one program I called for recently was that we should have Operation Nigerian in place. That means let people, when you see people, you can, police officials, immigration officials, they should be able to challenge people and say, prove that you are in fact a Nigerian, particularly people who fit into a certain profile. I'm sorry to say, but we do have to profile, because the threat is grave and is imminent.
Thank you very much. But one more thing, and I want your answer to be very brief on this. Your take on the attack in Brussels. Well,
I just said that it was a very coordinated attack. It was a very deadly attack. It was a brutal attack. And my heart goes out to families of those lost, 31 persons lost, and over 200 injured in that strike. But the Belgian security forces they are good. You know, they know what they are doing. The Americans sometimes describe them as slack, but they are good. At least they have one person in custody now, and they've been able to raid the hideouts of the places. And then look at that citizen tip, the one from the taxi driver, that he actually took those people to the airport. That was very helpful, because that now gave an address, a location, a C2, which the security forces could storm in order to gain more evidence. So it is very important that our security forces work hand in hand with citizens in trying to fight terrorism in this country. We must enroll citizens. We must have citizens giving us tips. They must know that we are fighting the same war, we are on the same side, and so on and so forth.
Well, Dr. Onakomo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Thank you very much for your wonderful contributions, as always. Well, we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.